listening to the Inspire Excellence podcast, recorded at the BVA headquarters with your hosts, Bill Whitaker and Tommy Alquist. Bill is the former CEO of the J.R. Simplot Company and is now a full-time adventure seeker and philanthropist. Tommy is the CEO of BVA Development, co-founder of Crush the Curve Idaho, and most importantly, a full-time grandfather. Each episode focuses on sharing the stories of individuals who are changing the world.
Welcome back to Inspire Excellence. We're really excited today with today's guest. Joining Bill and I today is a good friend and incredible guy, Brad Wiskirchen. And we are really, really excited to spend some time with Brad. We haven't seen you for a while, so we'll probably get caught up a little bit and then go into some things that I think will really help our listeners. I've really enjoyed Brad. One of the greatest leaders that we have in our state, incredible background, and have done so much. Every time I'm with you, I'm like, okay, what have you done in the last 6 months? And I always just sit back and like go, man, I feel like such a loser. I'm not doing stuff with my life.
Like, that's the story of my week. One of my law school classmates is the new Supreme Court nominee. So
really?
Are
you serious?
Yeah. A, it makes me feel old, and B, I'm like, what have I done? You know what I mean?
Well, she looks quite a lot younger than you, by the way.
She's a lot smarter than me too.
Well, she was number one in the class, so we
didn't have class rankings, so I'm not sure how that happened. We didn't. But
our first scandal of our podcast season.
Like, okay. Wow, that's super.
There's no class rankings at Notre Dame, so I guess everybody can claim they're number one. I was number one in something.
Well, that's great. And Brad, so one of the things, I don't know that I've ever asked you about growing up. And the whole purpose of our podcast is we take a great leader person and we want to get a story out there that may inspire someone else. And so tell me a little bit about your growing up.
My wife would argue I haven't. Me growing up, okay, I was actually born in St. Luke's. But my mom and dad met here. My dad was in the Air Force. He was from Missouri. My mom was from Boise, and so he was at Mountain Home, and I was the product of Mountain Home Air Force Base indirectly. And we moved around a lot. Moved to Missouri when I was 2 or 3, Illinois, Missouri, back to Boise, Arizona, Utah. I went to like 5 elementary schools, which I don't think is optimal, but it taught me how to. Probably gave me interpersonal skills because I had to make all new friends every year. And then went to junior high and high school in Utah, went to undergrad at BYU, and then Notre Dame for law school because I wanted to be religiously ambiguous. Actually, C. Sanders once told me.
Has anyone ever done that, by the way?
Yeah,
it's one of the best parts of your bio is you're like, I'm tracking. What?
Yeah, no. C. Sanders once told me, he's like, Wiskirchen, you should run for governor. And I said, well, first of all, you don't know if I'm a Democrat or a Republican, cease. And at the time I was on the Federal Reserve, so I couldn't tell anybody which I was. But he said, yeah, but you'd be great because everybody in Eastern Idaho is going to think you're Mormon because of BYU, and everybody in Northern Idaho is going to think you're Catholic because of Notre Dame. And you just have to keep your damn mouth shut. So
I did not have that luxury. I got slaughtered in the North.
I'll help you out next time.
That's right.
Who was your growing up? Listen, Federal Reserve CEO, your company's killing it. I'm around your people. We've had the fortune of being around your people at Kount. I think that they look up to you. I mean, it's an incredible culture.
Their standards are very low. So.
Yeah, they look up to you. Who taught you how to be a leader? Who did you look up to as a mentor?
I had a couple mentors. I was fortunate. I served an LDS mission in Switzerland, and my mission president, he's the guy who runs the mission, was Dean of Humanities at BYU, and he was an early mentor to me. And then I graduated from Notre Dame and was studying for the bar exam here. I went to work for Holland and Hart right out of law school, worked there, became a partner there, and then became CEO of Keynetics and its subsidiary ClickBank, and then was the founding CEO of Kount, and then spun it off of that. But 1 month after I graduated from Notre Dame called me and said, there's a gentleman giving a lecture at the Owyhee Plaza Hotel, and the alumni that Notre Dame would like to have someone attend and report on it. And you're there, so would you mind going and listening to Bayless Manning? Well, everybody knew Bayless Manning because he was one of the premier corporate lawyers in American history, original drafter of the corporate code, all kinds of things. So I went and listened, and I was in there's 40 people there. And at the end, Bayless came up to me and he's like, "I'd like to introduce myself." I'm like, "I know who you are, sir." And he's like, "I've been given this lecture on leveraged student loans." It was called the M plan because his last name Manning. For 20 years, nobody's ever nodded when they should nod, frowned when they should frown, and smiled when they should smile until today. Can I take you to lunch? And I said, "Sure." So we went to a little Thai restaurant that was downtown. It's not there anymore. Now it's a coffee shop. But he said, "What'd you think of my plan?" I said, "It was pretty good." He said, "This is a guy who was the co-founder of the Peace Corps, Kennedy's Undersecretary of State. He's the guy Kennedy sent to broker peace with Castro after the Bay of Pigs. He broke the Purple Code in World War II with Japan, spoke 11 languages fluently, first president of the Council on Foreign Relations. I mean, total genius." And I said, "Pretty good." And he said, "Pretty good would imply that there is room for improvement." What would you improve? So I spent the next hour explaining what I would improve. And then I walked back to Holland and Hart. I'm like, "What the hell did I just do?" And the next morning I went in to study for the bar exam, and there was a faxed handwritten letter to me that said basically, "We ended lunch and I thought you were a presumptuous little SOB. Now it's 3:00 in the morning and I can't sleep because I think you're right. Can we have lunch again tomorrow?" And we had lunch together. That was 96, basically every Friday from then until he died a half dozen years ago. And he was my total mentor. I mean, even keeled, even-handed, brilliant. We'd have lunch in German every Friday because he spoke German as well. And we'd sit on his front porch my team calls it the Fun Brad era when I drank, but drinking martinis and doing things like translating Beowulf from the Urtext into English. But Bayless was really my biggest mentor in life. So
number one lesson you learned from him. You said a few things, but what do you take away from that experience? What would you tell your son about?
He used to tell me, "Bradley, communication occurs, if it occurs at all, at the point of the receiver and not at the point of the sender."
Wow.
So if somebody
That's good.
didn't understand what I was saying, he'd be like, "Well, it's because you didn't communicate in terms that they would understand." And so I've carried that into our business, and we have open, honest, and fearless communication at all time at Kount. It's a big thing in our company. And every week, I just finished it before I came here. I write a company update. It's pretty long. It's a stupid Brad story from my youth. And then it's followed by a business principle that I learned in my youth through that stupid Brad story. And then I go through the good, the bad, and the ugly, literally everything going on in the business, good, bad, or ugly. And if we've just released our financials and delivered it to the board, the entire company gets that. They'll get it today. Our receptionist knows where we are in plan compared to EBITDA, et cetera. They know everything bad that's happened. If a customer's in jeopardy of leaving, if we've signed a big customer, everybody in the company knows every week. So I've really learned from Bayless that people will fill vacuums of information with misinformation. So just never give them an opportunity to have to fill a vacuum of information, and you won't end up with water cooler talk or rumors or gossip.
Brad, excuse me, you've been in a position to have a mentor, and he's important. How do we get the mentorship programs really solid throughout, whether it's Tommy's company or a company that I'm involved with? How mentorship programs are hard to get established, and how any coaching on that?
Yeah, I think I've thought a lot about that, and I do a lot of mentoring on my own, but none of it's formalized. And I think one of the areas where Idaho in particular is not extraordinary is we're not building the next generation of strong leaders. We have a lot of good early stage companies, but there's a funding gap, which we're starting to fill with outside investment. But there's also a leadership gap. And the one thing I've always noticed, I spend a ton of time in the Bay Area with my business because we have a lot of clients there. And I spent a lot of time in San Francisco when I was on the Fed and things like that. But you go to a coffee shop there and everybody's talking about, well, the last round I did, this is how I did it. Yeah. These are the right investors. It's constant. It's not a dull roar. It's loud and everybody's doing deals and sharing it. We don't have that here. we don't have a lot of CFOs who've done IPOs.
Yeah.
We don't have a lot of CEOs who've done IPOs. We don't have mentorship of the people who have to the next generation and the next and the next. And so I've often thought maybe instead of just having things like YPO, we ought to have formal organizations that are like CEO networking and mentoring organizations and CEO and COO and CTO organizations. Because if you're the CEO, there's plenty of them. There's YPO and everything else.
Right.
You can't throw a stick and they all charge $10,000 for the pleasure of going and hanging out with people you'd hang out with anyway. But I think we have to like do something formal like that in order to build up the next generation of leaders. And until we do so, I don't think we'll really see a bunch of companies grow. We've probably seen a disproportionately large group grow in the last couple of years. You've got Clearwater, you've got Truck Stop, you got bodybuilding, you got ClickBank, you got 50 Flowers. There's a lot of companies, but there's not very many that go from startup to 10 million in revenue, fewer that get to 50, very few that get to 100, right? But there ought to be this constant flow of mentoring. Yeah. And I think it's got to be a formal thing.
You know, and at the same time, I think mentorship can happen at all levels in a company.
I 100% agree with that.
And I agree with the growth. I think what an opportunity for a lot of companies to be able to do that. But you think about, if you're a 30-year-old, and let's just say you could be an MBA, let's just say you might be an attorney that doesn't want to be an attorney anymore, or whatever.
I'm a reformed.
Yeah, I know you are.
Yeah, reformed.
But the point is how do we establish mentorship, and what value could that be at all levels of a company? It's really about making sure that when leadership needs to develop, that we have it there to develop. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a two-way street. So I've had people in our company come to me and say, will you mentor me? Very young employees.
Right.
And I have a formal program where I'll sit down with them once a month, walk through their goals. You want to be on a nonprofit board to start to get board experience. Well, what are you interested in? Here's the people we can connect you with, those sort of things. But I can reach out and find people to mentor. But if people are smart and if they want to grow and if they want to learn, there's plenty of folks in this community who are willing to mentor. What I did was I would research the people that I wanted to learn from, figure out, this is when I was a young attorney at Holland Hart, figure out which boards they were on and things. And I would get myself on those boards. And then I would sit my butt next to them at every board meeting and build up a friendship.
Right.
And then you end up at the Arid Club having lunch or dinner and you get to ask them questions and you get to learn from them. But it took a ton of work on my part to figure out who they were.
I think for a lot of, I know kind of some of our audience that listens to this, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because if I look back at the people that really grow in leadership in a community and you look up to, it's actually a pretty common pathway to nonprofit boards.
Yeah. I agree.
I think about 20 years ago when I got on the Family Advocates Board, and I learned a ton. And then I look at United Way and you look at the different things you do. Certainly you go on to serve, but you just like in most things in life that are worthwhile, you usually take more than you give, right? And you take a lot from those opportunities. One of the questions I was thinking of when you're talking, because I know you have a lot of millennials that work for you. And this is not meant to be controversial. I just want to ask the question: do you see in their kind of fiber, their DNA, at what makes them up, differences in how they see leadership or mentorship or growth versus how it may have been for us as older folks? Or do you see it the same? Do you see their goals and aspirations being a little different? Or because we read a lot about that, but you do have a lot of younger people that work for you in your organization.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, the goals are the same, but the motivations are different. So they want to move up within an organization, but they want to do it so that they can make the organization more community minded, or there's a big emphasis on that. And I think for us, it was, I want to move up because I want to, have control over my own destiny. There seems to be a little bit less of that amongst the millennials. And I don't think that's neither good nor bad. It's just different. In a lot of ways, it's good, but it's forced me to think outside the box on what motivates people. And it's not all about money. It's about creating a culture where they're feeling like they are contributing to the community and to society. I mean, I think people will rally behind a morally compelling value proposition. And we've got one. Probably best put by my son when he was 6, which is, my dad finds the bad guys on the internet, which is great, right? And true. But we've also created a culture at Kount where we concentrate on community service. We just did a clean up not the Greenbelt, but the Foothills Trails project. We've done Habitat for Humanity homes. We regularly go to the food bank and fill backpacks. And everybody wants to go. We shut down the office and they can go. And we have a charitable contribution committee, which I'm not on because I found every time I said, I know the executive director of that nonprofit, everybody like, I'm going to vote to fund that. But those things matter. And I could take away a lot of benefits programs, dental or something else. And I think I'd get less pushback than if I took away, community involvement. And I have so many of my team members throughout the organization come to me and say, I want to be on this board so I can give back to the community. Can you help me get on it? And I think that's fantastic.
Brad, it's interesting to me because it's really about, I think if we can get the higher calling with the way we live our lives individually, and I'm not talking about religion. I'm just talking about the higher calling, something more purposeful, that it happens in business, right? It almost mirrors itself in business. So as leaders, we have the opportunity to create that purposeful or living or business career type thing, or just flat out higher calling.
Yep.
I remember I used to tell everybody, get on some type of philanthropic board.
Yeah.
And be a part of it and engage with it. And you don't have to be on there for life. Just
Yeah. Bayless used to tell me the only verb that matters in the English language is to do. Every other verb is filler. So get on it and do. And he was right.
The one thing that you could both speak to, and I want to hear the answer to this, is I love the community-minded attitude. I think it's awesome. I mean, I think what a great thing that speaks for our country and what it is, but profitability and the ability to work hard and still be part of, that's why I love your transparency. When you were telling us earlier, they also need to understand that the best part of money is given back, right?
Yeah.
And the way you give back and you're able to give people a day off to go work at the food bank or go do whatever is that you do create a profitable organization. And I think you get a balance of that. I was in a meeting with John Jackson once and I love that guy.
Oh, I did too.
Because we were down at Boise State and there was this big discussion of, do you build a company to do, higher purpose and higher cause? And he in his, in a true John Jackson way said, hey, that's all great, but you got to have a business that's profitable too. And you got to have, and so I think that balance is something that they can probably learn from an older generation. That's probably us, that's what motivates us to the younger generation, that there's this higher purpose. And I think it's a great fit. I really appreciate your answer because those two go together.
But you have to everybody has to, within the organization, has to understand the role they play there. And a lot of times it's just, sales has to sell more, right? Well, no, sales has to sell more, but the tech team has to build them something they can sell. And then they have to build them more stuff that they can, adjacent products that they can sell. And the marketing team has to get them the leads. And the accounting team has to be effective about making collections. And the HR team has to hire the right people at the right time. Otherwise, nothing gets done. And one thing about our organization is I really firmly believe everybody in the organization knows our mission. There's no excuse for them not to because they get told every week in my updates. But they also understand what our 180-day plan is. They understand everybody's role and who's responsible for each aspect of the 180-day plan, which departments and which department heads. And everybody knows their role. Everybody knows what we're driving towards profitability. And everybody knows when we get there, we're going to have more resources in order to enable them to do their jobs better and to give back to the community and to participate more in the community and to just make it, Kount an even cooler place to work. So if everybody knows their role, I think they get more excited about, hey, I can have an impact.
Yeah,
and so
I agree.
I'm going to shift gears a little bit. You served on the Federal Reserve, probably an incredible experience.
Yeah, probably the best in my professional career.
Share with us a little bit what that was like going into it, what you may have learned or something that we may not be thinking that you learned during that time of service.
Boy, right after I was appointed, I went to lunch with Gary Michael, and Gary served on the Fed before me, and he said, Wiskirchen, I've been on, I think he said 10 Fortune 100 company boards, and the single greatest thing I ever did in my career professionally was the Federal Reserve, and you'll say that someday too. And he was dead right. It was just fascinating to see how the sausage is made and how much work goes into evaluating what's going on in the economy every month before the vote takes place. It was fascinating to be in the room for the discussions and to actually have your vote about what should happen with the interest rates. And my favorite, there's so many great Fed moments. I remember I was appointed right after the, economic downturn in 2008, the crisis. And I remember sitting at a table in my orientation in DC with Chairman Bernanke as he walked us through hour by hour what happened in the crisis. And I sat there and thought, I'm a schmuck from Boise, Idaho, and I'm sitting here with Ben Bernanke listening to what he did hour by hour. And it was just the greatest experience. They appoint really quality people, present company excluded, as board members. I served with Blake Nordstrom, who passed away last year, and with the CFO of Costco and the CFO of Chevron and the CEO of, just remarkable people. And I learned every month something amazing from each of them. And you'd walk it. I mean, I would go to the airport and I'd call my wife after each board meeting and say, I think I need counseling. These are such depressing meetings, because it was my very last meeting on the Fed, and you get termed out after 6 years. And I remember I was chairing the meeting because I was chair at the time. And I was walking in the room. They're like, a member of the Board of Governors or a member of the FOMC is going to be in the meeting on the phone. I'm like, okay. Because nobody that's on the Federal Reserve, because of the 6-year term limits, has ever voted for an interest rate increase anywhere in the country. Like, holy cow. So if we vote for an interest rate increase, they're going to tutor you basically all on what the next step is, because nobody knows. Like, holy cow. Because nobody, because interest rates. Yeah. I'm like, holy crap. So the whole meeting, I was on my best behavior. Normally in the meetings, I was a total smart aleck, but, and I also got through them fast, but I kind of dotted my I's and crossed my T's at me.
So Brad, real quickly, how do they triage information between all the Federal Reserve boards? So,
there's 12 feds or 12 banks, and our Fed, the 12th district, 105 years ago when the Fed was organized, it was done based on population. So the 12th district is huge. It's California, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, Idaho, Hawaii, Alaska. It's like a third of the nation's GDP now.
Wow. So
it has to be broken into branches now. So you've got Salt Lake, Portland, Seattle, and San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And I was chair of the Salt Lake City branch. And so each branch has its meeting. Its board members vote on the rate recommendation. Then it sends one of its members to San Francisco. All the branches get together with the San Francisco Fed. They vote. And then the president of the San Francisco Fed flies as a member of the FOMC to DC with the other 11 presidents and the Board of Governors. And then they bring their vote from their district in. And they consolidate the information every month, because each board member is responsible for a vertical. Like I was over internet and digital media and a geography, and I was over Idaho. And you report, and then the PhDs in economics come in and tell you what's going on with the economy, and then you report what's going on in your vertical. And after you've assembled all that information, they clear the room, and then you vote. They literally clear the room.
Oh, they do clear the room. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an amazing process, and I can't imagine all the data that has to be assembled.
It's a ton
daily.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when I was appointed, I wasn't an econ wonk. I am now, but I wasn't even an econ major. And so I never even considered being on the Fed. Somebody called me, Robin Rockwood, then head of she's a VP of the San Francisco Fed. And Robin called me and said, Mr. Wiskirchen, this is Robin Rockwood from the Federal Reserve. We were wondering if you'd ever considered being on the Federal Reserve Board. And I said, Well, I always thought I'd be president of the United States first, but if I had to settle, I'd be on the Federal Reserve. Which one of my buddies put you up to this? And she's like, excuse me. I said, well, was it John Hale? Who was it?
Yeah.
She's like, Mr. Wiskirchen, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, no, seriously, which one of my buddies put you up to this? And she's like, are you near a computer? I'm like, yeah. She's like, why don't you Google my name? So I did. I'm like, holy crap. And at the time, Janet Yellen was president of the San Francisco Fed. She's like, Janet Yellen will be in Salt Lake City next week and was wondering if you'd join her for lunch.
Wow.
I'm like, holy crap. I'm like, yeah. So I didn't know anything about economics. I mean,
That's
as much as the normal person. So for the next week, I thought if I read everything Janet wrote, that it would look like I was pandering. Well, her husband won the Nobel Prize in economics. So I read as much as I could about what he wrote. Whenever she bring up a topic, I'd answer her as though I were her husband, figuring she loves him. So she must agree with a lot of what he said. And I guess I got it. So.
That's great.
That's great. Hey, with everything going on in our world right now, tell us what your thoughts are and just the years coming. If you're a business owner here in the Treasure Valley, we have a lot to listen. Growing your business, you've got a lot of uncertainty. We've got, it's pretty tumultuous times with the pandemic and with the election and with social issues out there. I'm not asking you to dig into the politics of it, but as a guy that's got a lot of experience, any advice for entrepreneurs out there?
Yeah, I'm not overly concerned. That's easy for me to say because this is like a record period for us because e-com's going through the roof and we are too. But if you have a product market fit, if your product meets a compelling need for the marketplace, there will always be a consumer. And so I'm not that worried about the economy broadly because I feel like America has always found a way to find a product market fit. And the other thing is I'm super pro-America. Like we have throughout the history of this country, every time we've needed to rally. World War II happens. People say, okay, I'm going to sacrifice my toaster and we're going to turn the toaster factory into a munitions plant. Whatever it takes, Americans, when their backs are against the wall, they figure out how to make stuff happen. I don't know what the crisis is going to be that's going to force change because the condition precedent to change is sacrifice. And we're not living in a period right now where anyone's willing to sacrifice anything. For us to get out of the economic malaise that we're experiencing as a country and the devastating debt load and many other things, people are going to have to recognize I may have to sacrifice my pet project. I don't know what it is. Public television, public whatever. I'm a fan of public TV, just for the record. But whatever my pet project is, I'm going to have to sacrifice it because we can't all have our pet projects and still fix things. So there's going to come a time, and I think it's probably in the not too distant future, when we face a crisis, which is going to force us all to say, okay, what do we sacrifice in order to fix things? I think it'll happen. I don't know why I have this unbridled optimism because nothing in politics has led me to believe that anybody that's leading this country, and I mean, not just in the White House, but Congress, anybody seems to be willing to sacrifice anything right now. But there will come a time when they have to, and not everything can keep getting funded. We can't keep borrowing money, and there will come a time when nobody's going to loan us money. And maybe that's what it's going to take, but we'll figure it out because we're Americans. And as far as the local economy, just keep looking for products that the market needs and people will buy it. And then it's blocking and tackling, right? Both of you know better than I do because you've both done a heck of a lot better than me in this world. But
I love the simplicity of that, though. Right? Find a product that people want.
I agree.
And do your best to block and tackle and make it happen. That's great advice.
So, Brad, you can tell from your transaction type. So can you talk about what's happening with transactions right now?
Yeah, we actually, it's funny you asked that because we were updating at the beginning of the pandemic, the Fed weekly on what we were seeing because, we touch transactions in over 200 countries a day. across the entire
Yeah,
economy,
yeah.
a huge percentage of the world's transactions. And so and across everything. So we had some of our biggest clients, like movie theater companies, drop from top 10 clients of Kount to nothing, right? Because nobody went. Travel booking dropped to nothing. Then we had things like Joann's Fabrics, who's a client who went through the roof and went, top 10 because everybody was trying to find crafts to do with their kids while they were at home, and everybody was buying stuff to make masks. Online wine sales went through the roof because people had their kids home. But I think we're going to see what we've seen is this probably acceleration of where everything was headed, which is a digital interaction with end consumers, probably a 3 to 5 year acceleration. So a lot of the companies that had it in their plan for 3 to 5 years out in the last 6 months have had to say, okay, we're going to pull it all forward. So we're looking, we had a rush of new clients in things like quick service restaurants, because they all had to go from, hey, you're going to buy a burger to buy in the app and pick up curbside.
Right.
So we signed all the biggest names within a matter of months. The biggest gas stations in the world. Nobody wanted to touch the keypad. So they had to accelerate their move to buying your gas through your phone. Still had to touch the pump, which I found odd, but which is the dirtiest thing in the process. But I think what we've seen is this traditional brick and mortar stores have all accelerated, revisited their interactions with their end consumers and accelerated them 3 to 5 years. And really, I think what you're going to see by mid next year is everything you do is going to have the opportunity to just buy in your app, in a wallet for the very store, what have you. And that opens up a whole different area of fraud that these companies have never had to deal with, which is a tremendous opportunity for us.
I bet.
But
what's interesting is I know this is crazy. I know it doesn't make sense. I kind of get a kick out of using my Apple Pay or my wallet because it's quick, it's easy, it's efficient. Sometimes I have to take my mask down,
right?
Because my mask is on. Oh, I forgot my Apple ID.
Yeah.
So then I have to pay it with a credit card anyway. But,
right.
But I think it's powerful for us to get used to doing that because that's the way transactions will be in the future.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a materially larger percentage of all transactions by the end of next calendar year. And there's still an enormous amount of cash in circulation right now, a record amount. One of my buddies actually is over our cash operations for the United States, a really close friend. He calls me his brother from another mother. But there's still more cash than ever in circulation, but it's all hundreds and it's all offshore with people. We are still the currency of currencies. So there's a ton of cash in circulation. People just aren't going into the store and dropping a $5 bill. They're just paying it
right with
their phone. They're hoarding the cash.
No kidding. Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's also interesting to me that the sophistication for, what's the evolution of PayPal?
Yeah.
I mean, they kind of came from a pretty crude type system. I don't know how many years ago you would know, but 6 or 8 years ago.
Oh, PayPal? No, a long time ago.
It's a long time ago. But anyway, maybe I just started using it.
Yeah.
The point is they become more sophisticated along the way.
Yeah.
I'll find when I'm buying something online, if I have to put in all my data and information, sometimes I just say, you know what, I'll just forget this.
Yeah.
So the sophistication is going to increase sales volume, I believe.
Oh, yeah. It absolutely will. We're seeing increases in average tickets. We're seeing increases in sales volumes. We're seeing what this is enabling retailers to do is collect and create more data about the end consumer and get to know what they should target you with, right?
Yeah.
And so they're able to upsell and cross-sell you better because they're becoming more sophisticated. So you got on, staples.com to buy a printer cartridge. You ended up, hey, have you also bought this and this and this and this? And it's like going to Costco. I go in for, apples, and I ended up with new tires and diamonds and everything else. I'm like, well, I went in there for apples, for crying out loud. And suddenly I've got 11 gallons of water and a 30-gallon container of pickles, and I didn't need pickles. But at
the same time, we have to kind of counterbalance this electronic transaction world and this knowledge that this collected knowledge that e-commerce has on all of us. There's a really kind of good documentary type movie called Social Dilemma.
Yeah.
And my wife, she said, you have to watch this, because I'm the kind of guy that if there's not a UPS package sitting on the front porch every day, I'm disappointed. I mean, with my gear and my stuff. Yeah. But the point is, the Social Dilemma, we seems to me like, and you would know, that we need to be prepared for the changes.
You've got to find the right balance. And I just spoke about this on an online webinar like last Wednesday. You have to find the right balance between privacy and consumer ease. And but the challenge is that a lot of regulations are being promulgated to protect people's privacy and their private information, which is 100% important. But unless there are carve-outs related to fraud control, then all you've done, because you need data about the individual engaged in the transaction in order to determine whether they're a legitimate person or not, for fraud control reasons. So if the regulations are overly broad and don't have carve-outs for fraud control, then what you've done is you've basically handcuffed the good guys and made it a lot easier for the bad guys, because they don't care what the regulations are. They'll collect and create whatever data they want about you. And it's becoming easier and easier because of the data breaches and the accessibility of ready accessibility of information for anybody to make a synthetic identity about you. Mm-hmm. And some of the data breaches have been particularly bad because I call it's my term. It's not a term of art. There's transient data and permanent data. Transient data is something I can change. If my credit card number gets stolen, I can call the company and get a new credit card number, right? No biggie. My driver's license number gets stolen, a little bit harder. My passport number gets stolen, kind of SOL. But my social security number gets stolen, that doesn't change. Somebody can keep fabricating my identity with that information that's permanent. So with some of these data breaches, as those things get into the wild, you can't unring that bell. Somebody's got information that they're always going to be able to use about you. File tax returns on your behalf. Somebody actually last week filed for unemployment benefits in the state of Idaho, and the folks at the state know me, and they're like, "You're not unemployed looking for a $13 an hour job, are you?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Yeah, we're going to reject this claim."
Actually, that was me.
So, there's just a balance. 100%.
Yeah,
you're 100% right.
Sure.
You got to balance privacy with security and convenience.
Yeah.
So we're running out of time. I'm going to ask you one more question. My little Brad Wiskirchen story. I love this. I dropped by your house a while ago.
Yeah, I remember.
Pulled up, and I watched you and your son out front doing yard work.
Uh-huh.
And for a minute, I pulled up, and I was a little bit surprised. I thought, oh, the one guy that I know in my life that I didn't think would be doing yard work is Brad Wiskirchen. And I just thought, And then I went up there and I watched you interact with your son.
Yeah.
And you were showing him how to do something. And I stood there talking to you guys for a while. And first of all, I was really impressed with the connection you have with him. And you could tell you guys were just best of friends.
Yeah.
And second of all, I thought, you look at the mentorship that kid's getting from his dad. And so, to wrap this up, what does that mean to you? And then what would you tell a listener about what we should be teaching the next generation? What matters to you? What do you tell him out there cutting the lawn? Because I know there's a lot of mentoring going on.
Well, there was then. Now he's got his own lawn care service. He's making a fortune. He actually offered to loan me some money. That was part of the lesson right there. Yeah, he actually offered to loan me some money, but he has no cost of goods sold because I bought the lawnmower and everything else. No, I think, I tell him this all the time. Look, I can teach anybody how to be an accountant in our organization. I can teach anybody how to be a coder. Well, I can't, but somebody in my organization can. What I can't teach people is the important skills, which are how to get along with other people, how to play nice in the sandbox with other people, how to treat other people with respect, how to be honest, and how to be a hard worker. And if you can dial those things in, if you can be the best prepared person in every room that you walk into, if you go home at nights and prepare for the next day, so you're the best prepared person in every meeting you go into the next day, you're going to succeed in life. If you treat everybody in the organization with respect, if you walk into a business and you treat the receptionist with respect, that's the first interaction you're going to have with the CEO. It's not when you shake his hand, because she's going to say, Brad Wiskirchen's here and he's a butthead, or Brad Wiskirchen's here, he's a funny guy. And if you're just honest with people, you will succeed, and you'll be able to do whatever you want to do if you can get those things dialed in.
You know what I think's pretty interesting as we close is you told me that you do all the housework and now you do the yard work too.
It's true. Nobody in our house does anything.
And I hope your wife listens to this.
No, I will say this, and you won't remember this, but you, Bill, and I did a panel.
I do remember.
On global economics.
Yeah, we did.
Years ago. And we walked out of that room, and it was a while ago. And you said, I could learn so much about you from innovation. And I got in my car and I was like, freaking Bill Whitaker said it's 100% true. No. 100% true. Said he could learn something from me. That was like the highest compliment.
Yeah.
No, I mean it.
Well,
that's
really
100%
nice,
sincere.
Yeah,
it was. I'll never forget that.
I'm humbled by that statement.
100% true.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Brad, we're honored to have you as a friend. And I think that thanks for coming on this. I think a lot of people are going to take away some real pearls today from you. And thanks for all you do in the community. And we appreciate you. And that's Inspire Excellence Podcast. Join us next time for another inspiring story. And thank you to Brad Wiskirchen for being here today.
Absolutely.
Thanks, my friends.
You've been listening to the Inspire Excellence Podcast. We hope you've heard something today that will inspire you to make a difference in the world. Join us again for our next episode.